I'm so big. Oh my goodness. Hold up. Let me fix. That's a little bit better. Oh my goodness. But hi everybody. Hello, hello. I am Lacrimosa Rose, your Stardust Guardian and variety streamer. Hi, hi. uh, we're doing something a little bit different. I need to calibrate my stupid thing again. Every single time I get up, I have to recalibrate my VTuber. It's a little bit annoying, I'm not gonna lie. But anyways. Hello, hello. Thank you, Mac, for the bits. And also, big thank you to Way Too Late TV and You Ate My Boris for the follows. Thank you, thank you. Hi. I hope you guys enjoy your stay here in the Constellation Garden. Yeah. But we're doing something a little bit different today. We're gonna be reading some Christmas stories. So literally I just went on the internet and looked up Christmas stories to read online for free. I got a couple of them, including the original Nutcracker Tale. So we're gonna be reading that. We'll probably start with the Nutcracker, and then depending on how quickly it gets me through, the original Nutcracker Tale is kind of who's Boris and why did they get eaten? I don't know. But yeah. Nutcracker. But yeah, some of the stories that I have lined up are some of the classic ones, such as Tale of the Magi, Hans Christian Andersen's The Fir Tree. I have Nutcracker and Mouse King. A Christmas Tree by Charles Dickens. The Elves and the Shoemaker from, I believe this one's a Grimm fairy tale one. And yeah. So those are some of the ones that we have. We'll probably start with Nutcracker and Mouse King because that one is the longer one. The other ones are pretty short and pretty easy to pretty quick to get through. But we shall be reading. So this is a little bit of a strange stream. Thank you for the cat ears. Also, I remembered. I got water. Can we get Nutcracker background music? I would say yes. However, I am worried about copyright. I don't know how old the Nutcracker music is. If it's old enough, then I can play it without worry of being copyright stricken. If it is new enough, because they still use it for ballets and things like that, if it is new enough that copyright laws still apply to it, then the answer is going to be no. For right now, the answer is going to be no. Why? Because I'm terrified of being DMC'd. I haven't had an issue with that yet because I don't play DMCA music. Let's go H2O. Because I will be reading and talking a lot, so my throat is probably gonna be very mad with me. Very, very mad with me. But regardless of that, I hope y'all got your cozy little blankets. I hope y'all have your favorite holiday or winter drink. And I hope y'all are cozy and ready, because we are going to get started here soon. Yay! I'm a little bit nervous. I don't know if you can tell by how much I'm stalling. Hi, GoPro. You have my attention. What would you like? Ba, ba, ba. Mod announcements. It's fine. I only have three. I only have 3 applicants. I I think I'm gonna go ahead and keep the applications open for tomorrow. If nobody else has applied for it, then the mod applications will be closed. I have looked over through the words. Oh my goodness, I have looked through some of the responses. A lot of y'all have. You know, damn fucking well I ain't leaving you alone with this. I know. I know you won't. Oh my goodness. But yeah, mod applications will remain open until 12 p.m. PST, December what's the date? December 9th. 12 p.m. PST? No, 11:59 p.m. PST tomorrow. So they'll remain open for a little over another 24 hours. After that, I'll go through all the answers. Y'all will probably get a DM from me just to clarify some of the answers that you have given me. Because even though I put paragraph, y'all gave only one of you actually put a paragraph. The rest of you gave me 2 sentences. So I will probably reach out to some of y'all to ask for more clarifications. Did I put? I don't know. But yeah. So I've already gone through them. A lot of you put those of you that applied have put some really, really good answers. I tried to be very direct with the answers. Yee. But mod application or mod announcements should be done hopefully Thursday. So yeah, hopefully Thursday before I stream. Thursday is going to be kind of a long stream because we have the VR chat stream. And hopefully, maybe, I don't know, I haven't gotten any notifications yet. Hopefully we'll be able to stream, or I'll be able to stream the Game Award, or the Game of the Year Awards ceremony. But we shall see, because I have not gotten an answer back. If not, stream will probably end at Boop Chat, and then we go our separate, or Boop Chat. Stream will probably end at VR Chat. I sadly, or thankfully, I don't know how you see about it, but I used my main email to answer it. Hope it's not a problem. It's not a problem with me. It's I didn't even know it was here. I didn't even know it was your main email. It's not a problem with me as long as it's not a problem with you that I know that information now. But yeah. Oh, I'm looking at some of these names for Nutcracker and Mouse King. I thought you could see it. By the way. Candy cane. This is a threat. I got 50k. Uh-oh. Y'all don't chew into candy canes. It is a bad idea, but I do it anyways. Did you have your monthly water and one stream already? I haven't had a water redeem this stream. I did get a water redeem last stream. A couple of them, actually. I would have 50k if cat ears were not a thing. Oh, be thankful I didn't add a cattail to that to that redeem. Thank you for the hydrate. Oh, you're gonna drown me, aren't you? You drowned me. It's time to drink water. Everyone's sleep paralysis demon. An unspeakable horror, my sleep paralysis demon. GoPro standing over me with a bucket full of water ready to dump on my face. Oh my goodness. Anyways, we're gonna go ahead and get started with the reading. We'll be staying on. So can we get a cattail as an addition? Theoretically, I haven't set it up yet. The one-eyed turtle with a comically large bucket of mineral water. But yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and get started on reading. If I don't catch any redeems, I'm sorry. For whatever reason, the sounds for them aren't working. They haven't been working for a while now, but because I usually watch my stream, I usually catch them in time. So I would recommend for today, save your points. I appreciate the points, but save them for when I'm actually able to catch them and react to them and make a little funny hee hee ha 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 bit out of it. But also, you will have to forgive me on the pronunciation of some of these names. It has been a while since I have seen or read any of these names, so you'll have to forgive me if I mispronounce any of them. Feel free to make fun of me in the chat about it politely. Don't hurt my feelings. I'm very sensitive right now. Blood Moon has just started. Yay. But yeah, also, I forgot to say thank you to GoPro for the 20 stream streak. That is amazing. You've been here for every single one of my streams for the past 20 streams, which is how many weeks? About 2.5. 2.5 worths of streams. Yay. And also, I've been making good on my promise of streaming every day of December, aside from the 1st, because I worked an 8-hour shift. I was tired. I haven't worked an 8-hour shift in like 6 months. So, forgive me for that. But, yee. Okay. I'm gonna stop stalling now, and we're gonna get to reading. We're gonna start off with Nutcracker and the Mouse King by E.T.A. Hoffman, translated by Mrs. Saint Simon. Yee. Alrighty. So, cozy up, bundle up, and turn on some relaxing music or your Nutcracker ballet thing if you want, and enjoy the reading. Yay! Right. Nutcracker and Mouse King, Chapter 1, Christmas Eve. During the long, long day of the 24th of December, the children of Dr. Stranville were not permitted to enter the parlor, much less the adjoining drawing room. Frederick and Maria sat nestled together in a corner of the back chamber. Dusky twilight had come, and they felt quite gloomy and fearful, as was commonly the case on this day. No light was brought into them. Fred, in great secrecy and in a whisper, informed his little sister, she was only just 7 years old, that ever since morning he had heard rustling and a rattling, and now and then a gentle knock in the forbidden chambers. Not long ago he had seen a little dark man with a large chest under his arm, gliding softly through the entry, but he knew very well that it was nobody but Godfather Drosselmeyer. Upon this, Maria clapped her little hands together for joy and exclaimed, "Ah, what beautiful things has Godfather Drosselmeyer made for us this time." Councillor Drosselmeyer was not a very handsome man. He was small and thin, had many wrinkles in his face. Over his right eye, he had a large black patch, and he was without hair, for which reason he wore a very nice white wig. This was made of glass, however, and was a very ingenious piece of work. The godfather himself was very ingenious also. He understood all about clocks and watches and could even make them. Accordingly, when any one of the beautiful clocks in Dr. Stahlbaum's house was sick and could not sing, Godfather Drosselmeyer would have to attend it. He would then take off his glass wig, put on his brown coat, put on a blue apron, and pierce the clock with sharp pointed instruments, which usually caused little Maria a great deal of anxiety. But it did the clock no harm. On the contrary, it became quite lively again, and began at once right merrily to rattle, and to strike, and to sing, so that it was pleasant to all who heard it. Whenever he came, he always brought something pretty in his pocket for the children. Sometimes a little man who moved his eyes and made a bow. At others, a box from which a little bird popped out when it was open. Sometimes one thing, sometimes another. When Christmas Eve came, he always had a beautiful piece of work prepared for them, which had cost him a great deal of trouble, and on this account it was always carefully preserved by their parents, after he had given it to them. "Ah, what beautiful present has Godfather Drosselmeyer made for us this time!" exclaimed Maria. It was Fred's opinion that this time it could be nothing else than a castle, in which all kinds of fine soldiers marched up and down and went through their exercises. Then other soldiers would come and try to break into the castle, but the soldiers within would fire off the cannon very bravely, until all roared and cracked again. "No, no, no," cried Maria, interrupting him. "Godfather Drosselmeyer has told me of a lovely garden where there is a great lake, upon which beautiful swans swim about, with gold collars around their necks, and swing their sweetest songs. Then there comes a little girl out of the garden down along the lake, and coaxes the swans to the shore, and feeds them with sweet cake." "Swans never eat cake," interrupted Fred, somewhat roughly, "and even Godfather Drosselmeyer himself couldn't make a whole garden. After all, we have little good of his playthings. They were all taken right away from us. I like what Papa and Mama give us much better, for we can keep our presents for ourselves and do as we please with them." The children now began once more to guess what it could be this time. Maria thought that Miss Truchton, her great doll, was growing very old, so she fell almost every moment upon the floor, and more awkwardly than ever, which could not happen without leaving sad marks upon her face. And as to neatness and dress, this was now altogether out of the question for her. Scolding did not help the matter in the very least. Frederick declared, on the other hand, that a bay horse was waiting in his stable, and his troops were very deficient in cavalry, as his papa very well knew. By this time it had become very dark. Frederick and Maria sat close together, and did not venture again to speak a word. It seemed now as if soft wings rustled around them, and very distant but sweet music was heard at intervals. At this moment a shrill sound broke upon the ears. Clink, 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 clink. The doors flew wide open, and such a dazzling light broke out from the great chamber, with the loud exclamation, "Ah, ah!" The children stood fixed at the threshold, but Mama and Papa stepped to the door, took them by the hand, and said, "Come, come, children, and see what Christmas has brought you this year." Chapter 2. The Gifts. Kind reader or listener, whatever may be your name, whether Frank, Robert, Henry, Anna, or Maria, I beg you to call to mind the table covered with your last Christmas gifts, as in their newest gloss they first appeared, and your delighted vision. You will then be able to imagine the astonishment of the children as they stood with sparkling eyes, unable to utter a word, for joy at the sight before them. At least Maria called out with a deep sigh, "How beautiful! Ah, how beautiful!" And Frederick gave 2 or 3 leaps in the air, higher than he had ever done before. The children must have been very obedient and good children during the past year, for never on any Christmas Eve before had so many beautiful things been given to them. A tall fir tree stood in the middle of the room, covered with gold and silver apples, while sugar almonds, comfits, lemon drops, and every kind of confectionery hung like bulbs and blossoms, or hung like bulbs and blossoms. Buds, buds, hung like buds and blossoms upon all its branches. But the greatest beauty about this tree was the many little lights that sparkled amid its dark boughs. Bows? Yes, which like stars illuminated its treasure, or like friendly eyes seemed to invite the children to partake in its blossoms and fruit. The table under the tree shone and flushed with 1,000 different colors. Ah, what beautiful things were there! Who can describe them? Maria spied the prettiest dolls, a tea set, all kinds of nice little furniture, and what eclipsed all the rest, a silk dress tastefully ornamented with gay ribbons, which hung upon a frame before her eyes, so that she could view it on every side. This she did too, and exclaimed over and over again, "Ah, the sweet, the dear frock! May I put it on? Yes, yes, may I really though, really wear it?" In the meanwhile, Fred had been galloping around and round the room, trying his new bay horse, which, true enough, he found fastened by its bridle to the table. Dismounting again, he said it was a wild creature, but that was nothing. He would soon break him. He then reviewed his newest regime of hussars, who were very elegantly arrayed in red and gold, and carried silver weapons, and rode upon such bright shining horses that you would almost believe these were pure silver also. The children had now become somewhat more composed, and turned to the picture books, which laid open on the table, where all kinds of beautiful flowers and gaily dressed people and boys and girls at play were painted as nature, as if they were alive. Yes, the children had just turned to these singular books when cling, ling, the bell was heard again. They knew that Godfather Drosselmeyer was now about to display his Christmas gift, and ran towards a table that stood against the wall, covered by a curtain reaching from the ceiling to the floor. The curtain behind which he had remained so long concealed was quickly drawn aside, and what saw the children then? Upon a green meadow, spangled with flowers, stood a noble castle, with clear glass windows and golden turrets. A musical clock began to play, when the doors and windows flew open, and little men and women, with feathers in their hats and long flowing trains, were seen sauntering about in the rooms. In the middle hall, which seemed as if it were all on fire, so many little tapers were burning in silver chandeliers. There were children in white frocks and green jackets dancing to the sound of the music. A man in an emerald green cloak at intervals put his head out the window, nodded, and then disappeared. And Godfather Drosselmeyer himself, only not that he was not much bigger than Papa's thumb, came out and then to the door of the castle, looked about him, and then went in again. Fred, with his arms resting upon the table, gazed at the beautiful castle, and with the little walking and dancing figures, and then said, Godfather Drosselmeyer, let me go into your castle." The Chancellor gave him to understand that could not be done, and he was right, for it was foolish in Fred to wish to go into a castle, which all its golden turrets was not as high as his head. Fred saw that likewise himself. After a while, as the men and women kept walking back and forth, and the children danced, and the emerald man looked out his window, and Godfather Drosselmeyer came to the door, and all without the least change, Fred called out impatiently, "Grandfather Drosselmeyer, come out this time at the other door." "That can never be, dear Fred," said the Chancellor. "Well then," continued Frederick, "let the little green man who peeps out the window walk about with the rest." "And that can never be," rejoined the Chancellor. Then the children must come down," cried Fred. "I want to see them nearer." "All that can never be, I say," replied the Chancellor, a little out of humor. "As the mechanism is made, so it must remain." So, cried Fred in a drawling tone, all that can never be. Listen, Grandfather Drosselmeyer, if your little dressed-up figures in the castle there can do nothing else but always the same thing, they're not good for much, and I care very little about them. No, give me my hussars who can maneuver backward and forward as I order them and are not shut up in a house. With this, he darted towards a large table and drew up his regime upon their silver horses, and let them trot and gallop, and cut and slash to his heart's content. Maria also had softly stolen away, for she too was soon tired of the sauntering and dancing puppets in the castle. But she was very amiable and good. She did not wish it to be observed so plainly in her as it was in her brother Fred. Councillor Drosselmeyer turned to the parents and said, somewhat angrily, an ingenious work like this was not made for stupid children. I will put up my castle again and carry it home. But their mother now stepped forward and desired to see the secret mechanism and curious works by which the little figures were set in motion. The Chancellor took it all apart and then put it together again. While he employed this manner, he became good-natured once again, and gave the children some nice brown men and women, with glint faces, hands, and feet. They were all made of sweet thorn, and smelt like gingerbread, at which Frederick and Maria were greatly delighted. At her mother's request, the elder sister, Louise, had put on the new dress which had been given to her, and she looked almost charmingly in it. But Maria, when it came to her turn, thought she would look at hers a while longer as it hung. This was readily permitted. Chapter 3. The Favorite. The truth is, Maria was unwilling to leave the table then, because she had discovered something upon it, which no one had yet remarked. By the marching out of Fred's hussars, who had been drawn up close to the tree, a curious little man came into view, who stood there silent and retired, as if he were waiting quietly for his turn to be noticed. It must be confessed, a great deal could not be said in favor of the beauty of his figure, for not only was his rather broad, stout body all out of proportion to the little slim legs that carried it, but his head was by far too large for either. A genteel dress went a great way to compensate for these defects, and led to the belief that he must be a man of taste and good breeding. He wore a hussar's jacket of beautiful bright violet, fastened together with white loops and buttons, pantaloons of exactly the same shade, and the neatest boots that ever graced the foot of a student or an officer. They fitted so tight to his little legs as if they were painted upon them. It was laughable to see that in addition to this handsome apparel, he had hung upon his back a narrow, clumsy cloak that looked as if it were made of wood, and upon his head he wore a woodman's cap. But Maria remembered that Godfather Drosselmeyer wore an old shabby cloak and an ugly cap, and he was still a dear, dear godfather. Maria could not help thinking also that even if Godfather Drosselmeyer were in other aspect as well dressed as this little fellow, yet after all he would not look half so handsome as he. The longer Maria gazed upon the little man whom she had taken a liking to at first sight, the more she was sensible of how much good nature and friendliness was expressed in his features. Nothing but kindness and benevolence shone in his clear green, though somehow too prominent eyes. It was very becoming of the man that he wore about his chin a nicely trimmed white beard of white cotton. From this, for by this, the sweet smile upon his deep red lips were rendered much more striking. "Ah, dear friend," exclaimed Mary at last, "to whom belongs that charming little man by the tree there?" "He shall work industriously for you all, dear children," said her father. "He can crack the hardest nuts with his teeth, and he belongs well to Louise as you and Fred." With these words, her father took him carefully from the table and raised up his wooden cloak. Thereupon the little man stretched his mouth wide open, and showed 2 rows of white sharp teeth. At her father's biting, Maria put in a nut, and crack! The man had bitten it in 2, so that the shell fell off, and Maria caught the sweet kernel in her hand. Maria and the other two children were now informed that this dainty little man came to Maria and the other two children were now informed that this dainty little man came of the family of nutcrackers and practiced the profession of his forefathers. Maria was overjoyed at what she heard, and her father said, "Dear Maria, since Fred Nutcracker is so great favorite with you, I place him under your particular care and keeping. Although, as I said before, Louise and Fred shall have as much right to his services as you." Maria took him immediately in her arms and set him to cracking nuts, but she picked out the smallest, that the little fellow need not stretch his mouth open so wide, which in truth was not very becoming of him. Louise sat down by her, and Fred Nutcracker must perform the same service for her too, which she seemed to do quite willingly, for he kept smiling all the while very pleasantly. In the meantime, Fred had become tired of riding and parading his house-ears, and when he heard the nuts crack so merrily, he ran to his sister and laughed heartily at the little droll man, who now, since Fred must have a share in the sport, passed from hand to hand, and thus there was no end to his labor. Fred always chose the biggest and hardest nuts, when all at once, crack, crack, it went. 3 teeth fell out of the Nutcracker's mouth, and his whole under jaw became loose and rickety. "Ah, my poor dear Nutcracker!" called Maria, and snatched him out of Fred's hands. "That's a stupid fellow," said Fred. "He must be Nutcracker and has poor teeth. He don't understand his trade. Give him to me, Maria. He shall crowd next for me until he loses all his teeth and his whole chin into the bargain. Why make such a fuss about such a fellow?" "No, no, no," exclaimed Maria, weeping. "You shall not have my dear Nutcracker. See how sorrowful he looks at me, and show me his poor mouth. But you are a hard-hearted fellow. You beat your horses, yes, but lately you had one of your soldiers shot through the head." "That's all right," said Fred, "though you don't understand it. But Nutcracker belongs as much to me as to you, so let me have him." Maria began to cry bitterly and rolled up the sick Nutcracker as quickly as she could in her little pocket handkerchief. Their parents now came up with Godfather Drosselmeyer. The latter, to Maria's great distress, took Fred's part. But their father said, "I have placed the Nutcracker expressly under Maria's protection, and as I see that he is now in great need of it, I give her full authority over him, and no one must dispute it. Besides, I wonder at Fred that he should require further duty from one that has been maimed at the service. As a good soldier, he ought to know that the wounded are not expected to take their place in the ranks." Fred was much ashamed, and without troubling himself further about nuts or Nutcracker, stole around to the opposite end of the table where his hussars, after stationed suitably outpost, had encamped for the night. Maria collected together Nutcracker's lost teeth, tied up his wounded chin with a nice white ribbon which she had taken from her dress, and then wrapped up the little fellow more carefully than ever in her handkerchief, for he looked very pale and frightened. Thus she held him, rocking him in her arms like a little child, while she looked over the beautiful pictures in the new picture book, which she found among her other Christmas gifts. Contrary to her usual disposition, she showed some ill temper towards Father Drosselmeyer, who kept continually laughing at her and asking again and again how it was she liked to caress such an ugly little fellow. That singular comparison with Drosselmeyer, which she made when her eyes first fell upon the Nutcracker, now came again into her mind, and she said very seriously, "Who knows, dear godfather, if you were dressed like my sweet Nutcracker, and had on such bright little boots, who knows, but you would then be as handsome as he is." Maria could not tell why her parents laughed so loudly at this, and why the Chancellor's face turned so red, and he, for his part, did not laugh half so heartily this time as he had done more than once before. It is likely there is some practical reason for it. She insulted him and she doesn't know. Chapter 4. Wonders upon Wonders. Water break. And let's try not to choke on the water. Chapter 4. Wonders upon Wonders. In the sitting room of the doctor's home, just as you enter the room, there stands on the left hand, close against the wall, a high glass case, in which the children preserve all the beautiful things which are given to them every year. Louise was quite a little girl when her father had the case made by a skillful joiner, who set it in such a large, clear panes of glass, and arranged all the parts so well together that everything looked much brighter and handsomer when it's on its shelves than when it was held in the hands. On the upper shelf, which Maria and Fred were unable to reach, stood all Godfather Drosselmeyer's curious machines. Immediately below was a shelf for the picture books. The two lower shelves Fred and Maria filled up as they pleased, but it always happened that Maria used the lower one as a house for her dolls, while Fred, on the contrary, cantoned his troops in the one above. And so it happened today, for while Fred set his hosiers in order above, Maria, having laid Miss Truncheon aside, and having installed the new and sweetly dressed doll in her best furnished chamber below, had invited herself to tea with her. She had said that the chamber was well furnished, and it is true. Here was a little chintz sofa and several tiny chairs. There stood a tea table, and above all, there's a clean, white little bed for her doll to repose upon. All these things were arranged in one corner of the glass case, the side of which were hung with gay pictures, and it readily be supposed that in such a chamber the new doll, Miss Clara, must have found herself very comfortable. It was now late in the evening, and night, indeed, was close at hand. Godfather Drosselmeyer had long since gone home. Yet still the children could not leave the glass case, although their mother repeatedly told them that it was high time to go to bed. "It is true," cried Fred at last. "The poor fellows," meaning his hosiers, would like to get a little rest, and as long as I'm here, not one of them will dare to nod. I know that." With these words, he went up to bed. But Maria begged very hard. "Only leave me here a little while, dear mother. I have 2 or 3 things to attend to, and then they are done, and I will go to bed immediately." Maria was a very good and sensible child, and therefore her mother could leave her alone with her playthings without anxiety. But for fear she might become too interested in her new doll and other presents as to forget the lights which burned around the glass case, her mother blew them all out, and only left the lamp which hung down from the ceiling in the middle of the chamber, and which diffused a soft, pleasant light. "Come in soon, dear Maria, or you will not be up in time tomorrow morning," called her mother, as she went up to bed. There was something Maria had at heart to do, but she did not tell her mother, though she knew not the reason why, and as soon as she found herself alone, she went quickly about it. She still carried in her arms the wounded Nutcracker, rolled up in her pocket handkerchief. Now she laid him carefully upon the table, unrolled the handkerchief softly, and examined his wound. Nutcracker was very pale, but still he smiled so kindly and sorrowful that it went straight to Maria's heart. "Oh, Nutcracker, Nutcracker, do not be angry at Brother Fred because he hurt you so. He did not mean to be so rough. It is the wild soldier's life with his hussars that has made him a little hard-hearted. But otherwise he's a good fellow, I can assure you. Now, I will tend you very carefully until you are well and merry again. As to fastening in your teeth and setting your shoulders, that Godfather Drosselmeyer must do. He understands such things." But Maria was hardly able to finish the sentence, for she mentioned the name Drosselmeyer. Friend Nutcracker made a terrible weird face, and there darted something out of the corner of his eyes, like green sparkling flashes. Maria was just going to fall into a dreadful fright, when, behold, it was the sad smiling face of the honest Nutcracker again, which she saw before her, and she knew that it must be the glare of the lamp, which, stirred from the draught, had flared up and distorted Nutcracker's features so strangely. "Am I not a foolish girl," she said, "to be so easily frightened, and to think that a wooden puppet could make faces at me? But I love Nutcracker too well, because he is so droll and so good-tempered. Therefore, he should be taken good care of as he deserves. With this, Maria took friend Nutcracker in her arms and walked to the glass case, stooped down, and said to her new doll, "Pray, Miss Clara, be so good as to give up your bed to the sick and wounded Nutcracker, and make out as well as you can with the sofa. Remember that you are well and hearty, or you would not have had such fat red cheeks, and very few little dolls have such nice sofas." Miss Clara, in her gay Christmas attire, looked very grand and haughty, and would not even say muck. "But why should I stand upon ceremony?" said Maria, and she took out the bed, laid little Nutcracker down upon it softly, and gently rolled a nice ribbon which she wore around her waist, around his poor shoulders, then drew the bedclothes around him snugly, so that there was nothing to be seen of him below the nose. "He shan't stay with the naughty Clara," she said, and raised the bed with Nutcracker in it to the shelf above, and placed it close by the pretty village, where Fred's hosiers were quartered. She locked the case, and was about to go to bed, when, listen, children, when softly it began to rustle, and to whisper, and to rattle sound, and round under the hearth, behind the chairs, behind the cupboards and glass case, the great clock read louder and louder, but it could not strike. Maria turned towards it, and there a large gilt owl sat on the top, had dropped down its wings so that they covered the whole face, and it stretched out its ugly head with the short crooked beak, and looked just like a cat. And the clock whirred louder in plain words. "Dick-ree, duck, whir softly cluck. Mouse King has a fine ear. Plip, plip, pum, pum. The old sound lets him hear. Plip, plip, pum, pum. Or he might run away in fright. Now clock, strike soft and light, and pum, pum." It went with a dull, deadened sound 12 times. Maria began now to tremble with fear, and she was upon the point of running out of the room in terror, when she beheld Grandfather Drosselmeyer, who sat in the owl's place on the top of the clock, and hung down the skirts of his brown coat just like the wings. But she took courage and cried out loudly with sobs, "Godfather Drosselmeyer, Godfather Drosselmeyer, what are you doing up there? Come down and do not frighten me so, you naughty Godfather Drosselmeyer." Just then a wild squeaking and whimpering broke out on all sides, and then there was a running, trotting, and galloping behind the walls, as if 1,000 little feet were in motion, and 1,000 little lights flashed out of the crevices in the floor. But they were not lights. No, they were sparkling little eyes, and Maria perceived the mice that were all around, peeping out and working their way into the room. Presently it went trot, trot, hop about the chamber, and more mice in greater and smaller parties galloped across. All last placed themselves in line and column, just as Fred was accustomed to place his soldiers when they went to battle. This, Maria thought, was very droll, as she had not had that aversion to mice which most children have. Her terror was gradually leaving her, when all at once arose a squeaking so terrible and piercing that it sounded as if ice-cold water was poured down her back. Oh, what now did she see? I know, my worthy reader, Frederick, that thy heart, that of the wise and brave soldier Frederick Stahlbaum, sits in the right place. But if thou hadst seen what Maria now beheld, thou wouldst certainly have run away. Yes, I believe that thou wouldst have jumped so quickly as possibly into bed, and then have drawn the covering over thine ears much further than was necessary to keep thy warm. Alas, poor Maria could not do that for now. Listen, children. Close before her feet there burst out sand and lime and crumbled stone walls, as if thrown up by some subterranean force. And 7 mice heads with 7 sparkling crowns rose out of the floor, squeaking and squealing terribly. Presently, the mouse body to which these 7 heads belonged worked its way out, and the great Mouse King, crowned with 7 daemons, squeaking loudly, huzzaed in full chorus as he advanced to meet his army, which at once set itself in motion, and hot, trot, trot it went. Alas, straight towards the glass case, straight towards poor Maria, who stood close before it. Her heart had before beat so terribly from anxiety and fear that she thought it would leap out of her bosom, and then she knew she must die. But now it seemed as if the blood stood still in her veins. Half fainting, she tottered backward, when clatter, clatter, rattle, rattle, it went, and a glass pane, which she had struck with her elbow, fell in pieces at her feet. She felt at the moment a sharp pain in her left arm, but her heart all at once became much lighter. She heard no more squeaking and squealing. All had become still, and although she did not dare to look, yet she believed that the mice, frightened by the clatter of the broken glass, had retreated into their holes. But what was that again? Close behind her in the glass case, a strange bustling and rustling began, and little fine voices were heard. Up, up, awake, arms take, awake to the fight this night, up, up to the fight. All the while, something rang out clear and sweet like little bells. Ah, that is my dear musical clock, exclaimed Maria joyfully, and turned to quickly look. She then saw it flashed and lightened strangely in the glass case, and there was a great stir and hustle upon the shelves. Many little figures crossed up and down by each other and worked and stretched out their arms as if they were making ready. And now Nutcracker raised himself all of a sudden, threw the bedclothes clear off, and leaped with both feet at once out of the bed, crying out, "Crack, crack, crack, stupid pack! Drive mouse back, stupid pack! Crack, crack, mouse back! Crick, crack, stupid pack!" With these words he drew his little sword and flourished it into the air and exclaimed, "My loving vassals, friends, and brothers, will you stand by me in the hard fight?" Straightway 3 Scaramouches, a harlequin, 4 chimney sweepers, 2 guitar players, and a drummer cried out, "Yes, my lord, we will follow you with fidelity and courage. We will march with you to battle, to victory or death," and then rushed out after the fiery Nutcracker, who ventured the dangerous leap down from the upper shelf. It was easy enough for them to perform this feat, for besides the fine garments of thick cloth and silk which they wore, the insides of their bodies were made of cotton and tow, so that they came down plump like bags of wool. But poor Nutcracker had certainly broken his arms or his legs, for remember, it was almost 2 feet from the shelf where he stood to the floor, and his body was brittle, as if it had been cut out of linden wood. Yes, Nutcracker would certainly have broken his arms or his legs if, at the moment where he left, Miss Clara had not sprung quickly from the sofa and caught the hero with his drawn sword in her soft arms. "Ah, thou dear good Clara," sobbed Maria, "how I have wronged thee. Thou didst certainly resign thine bed willingly to little Nutcracker." But Miss Clara now spoke, as she softly pressed the young hero to her silken bosom. "You will not, oh my lord, sick and wounded as you are, share the dangers of the fight. See how your brave vassals assemble themselves, eager for the affray and certain of conquest. Scaramouche, harlequin, chimney sweepers, guitar players, drummer are already drawn up below, and the china figures on the shelf stir and move about strangely. Will you not, oh my dear lord, repose upon the sofa, or from my arms look down upon your victory?" Thus spoke Clara, but Nutcracker demeaned himself very ungraciously, for he kicked and struggled so violently with his legs that Clara was obliged to set him quickly down upon the floor. He then, however, dropped gracefully upon one knee and said, "Fair lady, the recollection of thy favour and condescension will go with me into the battle and the strife." Clara then stood so low that she could take him by the arm, raising him gently from his knees, and took out her bespangled girdle and was about to throw it around his neck. But little Nutcracker stepped 2 paces backward, his hand laid upon his breast, and said very earnestly, "Not so, fair lady, lavish thou not so, fair lady, lavish not thy favors thus upon me, for—" He stopped and sighed heavily, tore off the ribbon which Maria had bound around his shoulders, and pressed it to his lips, hung it across him like a scarf, then boldly flourishing his bright little blade, leaped like a bird over the edge of the glass case onto the floor. You understand, my kind and good readers and listeners, that Nutcracker, even before he had thus come to life, had felt very sensible the kindness and love which Maria had shown towards him, and it was because he had become so partial to her that he would not receive or wear the girdle of Miss Carla, though it shone and sparkled so brightly. The true and faithful Nutcracker preferred to wear Maria's simple ribbon. But what will happen now? As soon as Nutcracker had leaped out, the squeaking and whistling was heard. Ah, it was under the large table that the hateful mice have concealed their countless bands, and high above them all towers the dreadful mouse with 7 heads. What will now happen? I think we're almost done. I think we only have 3 more chapters left for the Nutcracker and the Mouse King. Chapter 5, The Battle. Beat the march, true vassal drummer, screamed Nutcracker very loudly, and immediately the drummer began to rattle and to roll upon his drums so skillfully that the windows of the glass case trembled and hummed again. Now it rustled and clattered therein, and Maria perceived that the covers of the little boxes in which Fred's armies were quartered were bursting open, and now the soldiers leaped out, and then down again upon the lowest shelf, where they drew up in fine array. Nutcracker ran up and down, speaking inspiring words to the troop. Let no dog of a trumpeter blow or stir, he cried angrily, for he was afraid he should not be heard, and then turned quickly to Harley Quinn, who had grown a little pale and clattered with his long chin. General, he said earnestly, I know your courage and your experience. There is need now for a quick eye and skill to seize the proper amount. I entrust to your command all the cavalry and artillery. You do not need a horse, for you have very long legs, and can gallop yourself tolerably well. I look to see you do your duty. Thereupon Harley Quinn put his long, thin fingers to his mouth, and crowed so piercingly that it sounded as if 100 shrill trumpets were blown merrily. Then it stirred again in the glass case. A neighing and a whinnying and a stamping were heard. And see, Fred's crusaders and dragoons, but all above, his new splendid hussars marched out and halted soon by the case. Regiment after regiment now defiled before Nutcracker with flying colors and warlike music, and ranged themselves in long rows across the floor of the chamber. Before them went Fred's cannon rattling along, surrounded by the cannoneers, and soon bomb it went. And Maria could see how the mice suffered by the fire, how the sugar plums plunged into their dark, heavy mass, covering them with white powder and throwing them more into a shameful disarray. But the greatest damage was done them by the heavy battery that was mice, notwithstanding, came nearer and nearer, and at least mastered some of the cannon. But then it went prit, prit, and Maria could scarcely see what now happened for the smoke and the dust. This, however, was certain, that each drop fought with the greatest animosity, and the victory was for a long time doubtful. The mice kept deploying more and more forces, and the little silver shot which they fired very skillfully struck now even the glass case. Clara and Trudchen round and round in despair. Must I die in the blossom of youth? Said Clara. Have I so well preserved myself for this, to perish here in these walls? Cried Trudchen. Then they fell about each other's necks and screamed so terribly that they could be heard above the mad tumult of the battle. Of the scene that now presented itself, you can have no idea, good reader. It went plit, plit, puff, piff, clitter, clatter, bum, bloom, bloom, bomb, in the wildest confusion, while the Mouse King and mice squeaked and screamed. And now that the mighty voice of the Nutcracker was heard, as he gave the necessary order, he was seen striding along through the battalions in the hottest of the fire. English said hello. Harlequin had made some splendid charges with his cavalry and covered himself with honor, but Fred's Hossiers were battered by the enemy's artillery with odious offensive balls, which made dreadful spots in their red jackets, which, for some reason, they would not move forward. Harlequin ordered them to draw off to the left, and in the enthusiasm of command, headed the movement himself, and the Crusaders and Dragoons followed. That is, they all drew off to the left and galloped home. By this step, the battery upon the footstool was exposed to great danger. But it was not long before a strong body of a very ugly mouse pushed on with such determined bravery that the footstool, cannons, cannoneers, and all were thrown by their headlong charge. The Nutcracker seemed a little disturbed by this and gave orders that the right wing should make a retreating movement. You know very well, O my military reader Frederick, that to make such a movement, it is almost the same thing as to run away, and you are now grieving with me at the disaster which impends over the army of Maria's darling Nutcracker. Hi, Dusty. But turn your eyes from the scene and view the left wing, where all is still in good order, and where there is yet great hope, both for the general and the army. During the hottest of the fight, large masses of mice cavalry had debouched softly under the under the settee, and amid loud, hideous squeaking, had thrown themselves with fury upon the left wing. But what an ostentane resistance did they meet with there! Slowly, as the difficult nature of the ground required, from the edge of the glass case had to be traversed, the China figures had advanced, headed by 2 Chinese emperors, and formed themselves into a hollow square. These brave, motley, but noble troops, which were composed of gardeners, Tarosels, Bonzes, Fasciers, Merry Andrews, Cupids, lions, tigers, peacocks, and apes, fought with coolness, courage, and determination. By their Spartan bravery, this battle of picked men would have wrestled the victory from the foe, had not a bold major rushed madly from the enemy ranks and bent off the head of one of the Chinese emperors, who, in falling, dashed to the ground 2 Bonzes and a Cupid. Through this gap, the enemy penetrated into the square, and in a few moments the whole battalion was torn into pieces. The brave resistance, therefore, was of no avail to the Nutcracker's army, which, once having begun to retreat, good night, was of no avail to Nutcracker's army, which, having once begun to retreat farther and farther, and at every step with diminished numbers, until the unfortunate Nutcracker halted with the little band close to the glass case. Yep, I need to hydrate. I can hear your throat is dry. My vocal cords vibrated in a weird way. Alright. Let the reserve advance. Harlequin, Scaramouche, Drummer, where are you? Thus cried Nutcracker in hopes of new troops which should deploy out of the glass case. And there actually came forth a few brown men and women, made of sweet thorn, with golden faces and caps and helmets, but they fought around so awkwardly that they did not hit one of the enemy, and at least knocked the cap off their own general's head. The enemy's chasseurs, too, bit off their legs before long, so that they tumbled over and carried with them to the ground some of Nutcracker's best soldiers. Nutcracker, now completely surrounded by the foe, was in the greatest peril. He tried to leap around to the edge into the glass case, but found his legs too short. Claire and Truncheon lay each in a deep swoon. They could not help him. Hussar's dragoons sprang merrily by him in safe quarters, and in wild despair he cried, "A horse! A horse! A kingdom for a horse!" At this moment, two of the enemy's trilliers, I have no idea, seized him by his wooden mantle, and the Mouse Queen, squeaking from his 7 throats, leaped in triumph towards him. Maria could no longer control herself. "Oh, my poor Nutcracker," she cried, and sobbing, and without being exactly conscious of what she did, grasped her left shoe, and threw it with all her strength into the thickest of the mice, straight at their king. In an instant, all seemed scattered and dispersed, but Maria felt on her arm a still sharper pain than before, and sank in a swoon to the floor. Chapter 6, The Sickness. Water is lovely. When Maria woke out of her deep death-like slumber, she found herself lying in her own bed, with the sun shining bright and sparkling through the ice-covered windows into the chamber. Close beside her sat a stranger, whom she soon recognized, however, as the surgeon Wildenstern. He spoke softly. "She's awake." Her mother then came to the bedside and gazed upon her with anxious and inquiring looks. "Ah, dear mother," lisped little Maria. "Are all the hateful mice gone, and is the good Nutcracker safe?" "Do not talk such foolish stuff," replied her mother. "What have the mice to do with Nutcracker? You naughty child, you have caused us a great deal of anxiety. But so it always is when children are disobedient and do not mind their parents. You played last night with your dolls until it was very late. You became sleepy, probably, and a stray mouse may have jumped out and frightened you. At all events, you broke a pane of glass with your elbow and cut your arm so severely that neighbor Wildenstern, who has just taken the piece of glass out of the wound, declares that it came very near cutting a vein, in which case you might have had a stiff arm all your life, or perhaps have bled to death. It was fortunate that I woke about midnight and not finding you in your bed, got up and went into the sitting room, and there you were in a swoon upon the floor, close by the glass case, the blood flowing in a stream. I almost fainted away myself at that sight. There you lay, and scattered around were many Fred's leaden soldiers, broken china figures, gingerbread men and women, and other playthings, and not far off your left shoe." "Ah, dear mother," exclaimed Maria, interrupting her. "Those were the traces of that dreadful battle between the puppets and the mice, and what frightened me so was the danger of poor Nutcracker, and when the mice were going to take him prisoner. Then I threw my shoe at the mice, and after that I don't know what happened." Surgeon Wildenstern here made a sign to the mother, and she said very softly to Maria, "Well, never mind about it, my dear child. The mice are all gone, and little Nutcracker stands safe and sound in the glass case." Dr. Sternenberg now entered the chamber, and spoke for a while with Surgeon Wildenstern. Then he felt Maria's pulse, and she could hear very plainly that he said something about a fever. She was obliged to remain in bed and take physic, and so it continued for some days. Although, except the slight pain in her arm, she felt quite well and comfortable. She knew little Nutcracker had escaped safe from the battle, and it seemed to her that she sometimes hears his voice quite plainly, as if in a dream, saying mournfully, "Maria, dearest lady, What thanks do I not owe you? But you can still do more for me. Maria tried to think what it could be, but in vain, nothing occurred to her. She could not play very well on account of the wound in her arm, and she had tried to read or look at picture books. A strange glare came across her eyes, so that she felt obligated to desist. The time during the day always seemed very long to her, and she waited impatiently for evening, as her mother was usually seated herself by her bedside and read or related some pretty story to her. One evening, she had just finished the wonderful history of Prince Fracken. Frackernden? I have no idea how to say that name. When the door opened and Godfather Drosselmeyer entered, saying, I must now see for myself how it goes with sick and wounded Maria. As soon as Maria saw Godfather Drosselmeyer and his brown coat, the image of that night in which Nutcracker lost the battle against the mice returned vividly to her mind, and she cried out involuntarily, "Oh, Godfather Drosselmeyer, you have been very naughty. I saw you sit upon the clock and covered it with your wings so it should not strike loud to scare away the mice. I heard how you called out to the Mouse King. Why did you not come help us, me and the poor Nutcracker? It was all your fault, naughty Godfather Drosselmeyer, that I must be here sick in bed." Her mother was quite frightened at this, and said, "What is the matter with you, dear Maria?" But Godfather Drosselmeyer had made very strange faces, and in a grating, monotonous tone, "Pendulum must weir, weir, weir. This way, that way, clock will strike. Tired of ticking, all the day. Softly weir, weir, weir. Strike clink, clank. Strike clang, clink. Bing, bang, and bang, 'twill scare away the Mouse King. Then owl in swift flight comes at dead of night. Pendulum must weir, weir. Clock will strike, clink, clank. This way, that way. Tired of ticking all the day. Bing, bang, and the Mouse King scare away. Weird, weir, plear, plear." Maria stared at Godfather Drosselmeyer, for he did not look at all as he usually did, but appeared much uglier, and he moved his right arm backward and forward, much like a puppet pulled by wires. She would have been afraid of him if her mother had not been present, and if Fred had not slipped in the meanwhile, and interrupted him with loud laughter. "Ha ha, Godfather Drosselmeyer," cried Fred. "You are today too droll again. You act just as my Harlequin that I threw him into the lumber room long ago." But their mother was very serious, and said, "Dear Chancellor, this is very strange sport. What do you really mean by that?" "Gracious me," cried Drosselmeyer, laughing. "Have you forgotten, then, my pretty watchmaker's song? I always sing it to such patients as Maria." With this, he drew his chair close to her bed, and said, "Do not be angry that I did not pick out the Mouse King's 14 eyes. That could not be. But instead, I have in store for you a very agreeable surprise." The Chancellor, with these words, put in his pocket, drew something out slowly, and behold it was Nutcracker, with his lost teeth nicely fastened in, and his lame chin new set and sound. Maria cried aloud with joy, and while her mother smiled and said, "You see now, Maria, that Grandfather Drosselmeyer meant well by your little Nutcracker." "But still you must confess, Maria," said the Chancellor, "that the Nutcracker's figure is none the finest, neither can his face be called exactly handsome. How this ugliness came to the hereditary in the family I will now relate to you, if you will listen. Or perhaps you know already the story of the Princess Perlette and the Lady Mouserings and the skillful watchmaker." "Look here, Grandfather Drosselmeyer," interrupted Fred. "Nutcracker's teeth you have fastened very well in, and his chin is no longer lame and rickety. But why he has no sword? Why have you not put on his sword?" "Ah," replied the Chancellor angrily, must you always meddle and make you rogue? What is Nutcracker's sword to me? I have cured his wounds, and he may find a sword for himself as he can." "That is true," said Fred. "He is a brave fellow, and will know how to get one." "Tell me then, Maria," continued the Chancellor, "have you heard the story of the Princess Perlipat?" "Yes, Perlipat." I hope, dear Chancellor, Mother said, that your story will not frighten as those that you narrate usually are. By no means, dearest madam, cried Drosselmere. On the contrary, what I have this time the honor to relate to Stroll and Mary. Begin, begin, then, dear godfather, cried the children, and Chancellor began as followed. Chapter 7. The Hoary... Wow, I can read. The Story of the Hard Nuts. Perpat's mother was the wife of a king, and therefore a queen, and perhaps straightway, at the moment of her birth, a true princess. The king was beside himself with joy when he saw his beautiful daughter as she lay in a cradle. He shouted loudly, danced and jumped upon one leg, and cried again and again, "Ha ha! Was there ever a thing seen more beautiful than my little Perpat?" Perhaps all the ministers, generals, presidents, and staff officers jumped about upon one leg like the king, and cried aloud, "No, never!" And it was so, in truth, for as long as the world had been standing, a lovelier child was never born than this very princess, Pirlipat. Her little face seemed made of lilies and roses, delicate white and red, and her eyes were of living, sparkling azure, and it was charming to see her little locks curled in bright golden ringlets. Besides this, Pirlipat had brought into the world 2 rows of little pearly teeth, with which 2 hours after her birth she bit into the High Chancellor's finger as she was examining her new features too closely, so that he screamed out, "Oh, Gemini!" Others assert that he screamed out, "Oh, crikey!" but on this point authorities are at the present day divided. Well, little Pirlipat bit the High Chancellor's finger, and the enraptured land knew now that some sense dwelled in Pirlipat's beautiful body. As had been said, all were delighted. The queen alone was very anxious and uneasy, and no one knew wherefore. But everybody remarked with surprise the care with which she watched Pirlipat's cradle. Besides that, the doors were guarded by soldiers, and not counting the 2 nurses who always remained close by the cradle, 6 maids night after night sat in their room to watch. But what seemed very foolish, no one could understand the meaning of it, was this: each of these 6 maids must have a cat on her lap, and stroke it the entire night through, and thus keep it continually purring. It is impossible that you, dear children, can guess why Pirlipat's mother made all these arrangements, but I know, and will straightway tell you. It happened that once upon a time, great many kings and fine princes were assembled at the court of Pirlipat's father, and on which occasion much splendor was displayed. The theaters were crowded, balls were given, and tournaments held almost every day. The king, in order to show plainly that he was in no want of gold and silver, was resolved to take a good handful out of his royal treasury and expend it in a suitable manner. Therefore, as soon as he had been privately informed by the overseer of the kitchen that the court astronomer had predicted the right time for killing, he ordered a great feast of sausages, leaped into his carriage, and went himself to invite the assembled kings and princes to take little sleep with him in order to enjoy the agreeable surprise which he had prepared for them. Upon his return, he said very affectionately to the queen, "You know, my dear, how extremely fond I am of sausages." The queen knew all at once what he meant by that, and it was this, that she could take upon herself, as she had often done before, the useful occupation of making sausages. The Lord Treasurer must straightway bring to the kitchen the great golden sausage kettle, and the silver chopping knives and stew pans. A large fire of sandalwood was made. The queen put on her damask apron, and soon the sweet smell of sausage and meat began. Thank you, imaginary. Let me see. and soon the sweet smell of the sausage meat began to steam up out of the kettle. The agreeable odor penetrated even the royal council chamber, and the king, seized with sudden transport, could no longer restrain himself. "With your permission, my lords," he cried, and leapt up, ran as fast as he could into the kitchen, embraced the queen, and stirred a little with his golden scepter in the kettle, and then, his emotion being quieted, returned calmly to the council. The important moment had now arrived, when the fat was to be chopped into little pieces, and browned gently into the silver stewpans. The maids of honor now retired, for the queen, out of true devotion and reverence for her royal spouse, wished to perform this duty alone. But just as the fat began to fry, a small whispering sound was heard. "Give me a little of the fat, sister. I should like my part of the feast. I too am a queen. Give me a little of the fat." The queen knew very well that it was Lady Mouserings who said this. Lady Mouserings had lived these many years in the king's palace. She maintained that she was related to the royal family, and that she herself was a queen in the kingdom of Mouselania, for which reason she held a great court under her hearth. The queen was kind and benevolent, and although she was not exactly willing to acknowledge Lady Mouserings as a true queen and sister, yet she was very ready to allow her a little banquet on this great holiday. She answered, therefore, "Come out then, Lady Mouserings. You are welcome to a little bit of fat." Upon this, Lady Mouserings leapt out very quickly and merrily, jumped upon the hearth, and seized her dainty little paws, one piece of fat after the other, as the queen reached it for her. But now all the cousins and aunts of the Lady Mousering came running out. Besides her 7 sons, besides her 7 sons, rude and forward rogues, who all fell at once upon the fat, and the terrified queen could not drive them away. But as good fortune would have it, the chef maid of honor came in at this moment, and chased away the intruding guest, so that the little of the fat was left. The king's mathematician, being summoned, demonstrated very, very clearly that there was enough remaining to season all the sausages, if distributed with the nicest judgment and skill. Drums and trumpets were now heard without, and all the invited potentates and princes, some of white palfreys, some in crystal carriages, came in splendid apparel to the sausage feast. The king received them kindly and graciously, and then, adorned with crown and scepter, became the monarch of the land, seated himself at the head of the table. Already in the first course, that of the sausage balls, it was observed that he grew pale and paler, and raised his eyes to heaven. Gentle sighs escaped from his bosom, and he seemed to undergo a great inward suffering. But in the second course, which consisted of long sausages, he sat back upon his throne, sobbing and moaning, held both hands to his face, and at last wept and groaned aloud. All sprang up from the table. The royal physician tried in vain to feel a pulse of the unhappy monarch. A deep-seated, unknown torture appeared to agitate him. At least, after much anxiety, and after the application of some very strong remedies, the king seemed to come a little to himself, and stammered out scarce audible the words, "Too little fat." The queen then threw herself in despair at his feet, and sobbed out, "Oh, my poor unhappy royal husband! Alas, how great must the suffering which you endure! But see, the guilty one is at your feet. Punish her without mercy. Alas, Lady Mouserings with her 7 sons and aunts and uncles have eaten up the fat," and with these words she fell right out over backwards in a swoon. Then the king, full of rage, leaped out and cried out, "Chief maid of honor, what happened to that?" The chief maid of honor told the story, as much as she knew of it, and the king resolved to take vengeance upon Lady Mouserings and her family for having eaten up the fat of his sausages. The privy council was called, and it was resolved to summon Lady Mouserings to trial and confiscate all her estates. But as the queen was of opinion that in the meanwhile she might eat up more of his sausage fat, the affair was placed at last in the hands of the royal watchmaker and mechanist. This man, who has the same name as mine to wit, Christian Elias Drosselmeyer, engaged, by means of a very singular and deep political scheme, to drive Lady Mouserings and her family from the palace forever. He invented, therefore, several curious little machines in which a piece of toasted fat was fastened to a thread, and these Drosselmeyer placed around Lady Mousering's dwelling. Lady Mousering was much too wise to not see through Drosselmeyer's craft, but all her warning, all her entreaties were of no avail. Every one of her 7 sons and many of her cousins and aunts went into Drosselmeyer's machines, and as they tried to snap away the fat, were caught by an iron grating, which fell suddenly down behind them, and were afterwards miserably slaughtered in the kitchen. Lady Mouserings, with the little remnant of her family, forsook the dreadful place. Grief, despair, revenge, filled her bosom. The court revelled in joy at this event, but the queen was very anxious, for she knew the disposition of Lady Mouserings, and was very sure that she would not suffer the death of her sons to go unavenged. In fact, Lady Mouserings appeared one day, when the queen was in the kitchen, preparing a harslet hash for her royal husband, a dish which he was very fond of, and said, "My sons, my cousins, and aunts were destroyed. Take care, queen, that Mouse Queen does not bite thy precious princess in two. Take good care." With this, she disappeared, and was not seen again, but the queen was so frightened that she left the hash to fall into the fire, and thus a second time Lady Mouserings spoiled a favorite dish for the king, at which he was very angry. "But this, dear children," said Drosselmeyer, "is enough for tonight. The rest at another time." Maria, who had her own thoughts about the story, begged Godfather Drosselmeyer very hard to go on, but she could not prevail upon him. He rose, saying, "Too much at once is bad for the health. The rest tomorrow." As the Chancellor was just stepping out of the room, Fred called out, "Tell me, Godfather Drosselmeyer, is it then really true that you invented mousetraps?" "How can you ask such a silly question?" said his mother, as the Chancellor smiled mysteriously and said in an undertone, "Am I a skillful watchmaker? And yet not able to invent a mousetrap?" Ah! I might have to stop after the Nutcracker and the Mouse King, because, I hate the buzzing in my throat. Chapter 8. The Story of the Hard Nut continued. Alright. We're gonna finish the Nutcracker tonight, I promise. "You know now, children," commanded Councillor Drosselmeyer on the following evening, "why the queen took such great care in guarding the beautiful princess, Perdpat. Was it not to be feared that Lady Mouserings would execute her threat, that she would come again and bite the little princess to death? Drosselmeyer's machines were not the least protection against the wise and prudent Lady Mouserings, but the court astronomer, who was at the same time private stargazer and fortune-teller to His Majesty, declared it to be his opinion that the family of Baron Perd would be able to keep Lady Mouserings from the cradle. Most of that name were secretaries of litigation at court, with little to do. though always at the hand of an embassy to a foreign power, but they must now render themselves useful at home. Hmm. I want to finish the story. And thus it came that each of the waiting women must hold a son of that family upon her lap, and by continual and attention fondling, lighten the severe public duties which fell to their lot. Late one night, two chief nurses who sat close by the cradle started up out of a deep slumber. All around lay in quiet slumber, no purring, stillness of the grave. Even the death watch could be heard ticking. And what was the horror of the two chief waiting women, as they just saw before them a large dreadful mouse, which stood erect upon its hind legs, and had laid its ugly head close upon the face of the princess. With a cry of terror they jumped up, all awoke, but in a moment Lady Mouserings, for the great mouse by Pirlipat's cradle was no one but she, ran as fast as she could to the corner of the chamber. The secretaries of litigation leapt after her, but too late. She had disappeared through a hole in the chamber floor. Little Pirlipat was woken up and wept bitterly. "Thank heaven," cried the nurse. "She lives, she lives." But how great was their terror when they looked at Pirlipat and saw that a change had taken place in the sweet baby child. Instead of the white and red face with golden locks, a large, ill-shaped head sat upon her thin, shriveled body. Her azure eyes were changed into green, staring ones, and her little mouth had stretched itself from ear to ear. The queen was brought to death's door by grief and sorrow, and it was found necessary to hang the king's library with thick wadded tapestries, for again he ran his head against the wall, crying out every time in lamentable tones, "Ah me, unhappy monarch!" He might now have seen how much better it would have been to eat his sausages without fat, and to leave Lady Mouserings and her family at peace under the hearth. But Pirlipat's royal father did not think about this. He laid all the blame upon the court watchmaker and mechanician, Christian Elias Drosselmeyer of Nuremberg. He therefore wisely decreed that Drosselmeyer should restore the Princess Pirlipat to her former condition within 4 weeks, or at least find out some certain infallible method of effecting this. Otherwise, he should suffer a shameful death under the axe of the executioner. Drosselmeyer was not a little terrified, but he had great confidence in his skill and good fortune, and began immediately the first operation which he thought useful. He took Princess Pirlipat apart with great dexterity, unscrewed her little hands and her feet, and carefully examined her inward structure. But he found, alas, that the princess would grow uglier as she grew bigger, and knew not what to do or what to advise. He put the princess carefully together again, and sank down by her cradle in despair, for he was not allowed to leave it. The 4th week had commenced. Yes, Thursday had come, when the king looked in with flashing eyes, and shaking his scepter at him, cried, "Christian Elias Drosselmeyer, cure the princess, or thou must die." Drosselmeyer began to weep bitterly, but the Princess Pirlipat lay as happy as the day, and cracked nuts. Pirlipat's uncommon appetite for nuts now occurred for the first time to the mechanist, and the fact likewise that she had come into this world with teeth. In truth, immediately after her transformation, she had screamed continually until a nut actually came in her way, which she immediately put into her mouth, cracked it, ate the kernel, and then became quite composed. Since that time, her nurses found that nothing pleased her so well as to be supplied with nuts. O sacred instinct of nature, eternal and explicit sympathy of existence, cried Christian Elias Drosselmeyer. Thou pointest me to the gates of a strong guard. They embraced with many tears, for they had been warm friends, then retired into a private cabinet, and examined many great books which treated of instinct and sympathies, Antipodes, and other mysterious things. Night came on, and the astronomer looked at the sky, and with the aid of Josmir, who had great skill in such matters, set up a horoscope of Princess Pirlipat. It was a great deal of trouble, for the lines grew all the while more and more intricate, but at least but joy. At last it became clear that Princess Pirlipat, in order to be freed from the magic which had deformed her and to regain her beauty, had nothing to do but eat the kernel to the nut. Had nothing to do but eat the kernel of the nut Krakatunk. Now the nut Krakatunk had such a hard shell that even an 840-pounder might be wheeled over it without breaking it. This nut must be cracked with the teeth before the princess by a man who had never been shaved and had never worn boots. The young man must then hold her the kernel with closed eyes and must not open them again until he had marched 7 steps backwards without stumbling. Drosmir and the astronomer had labored together without cessation for 3 days and nights, and the king was seated at dinner on Sunday afternoon, when the mechanist who was to have been beheaded early Monday morning, rushed with great joy and transport and proclaimed that he found out a method of restoring the Princess Pirlipat her lost beauty. The king embraced him with great kindness and promised him a diamond sword, 4 orders of honor, and 2 new Sunday suits. Immediately after dinner we will go to work, he added, and see to it, dear mechanist, that the unshorn young man in shoes is ready at hand with the nut Krakatunk, and take care that he drinks no wine beforehand, for fear he should stumble as he goes 7 steps backward, like a crab. Afterwards he may drink like a fish. Drosmir was very much discomposed at these words, and after such stuttering and stammering, and said that the method was discovered indeed, but the nut Krakatunk and the young man to crack it were yet to be sought after, and that it was quite doubtful whether nut or nutcracker would ever be found. The king, in great anger, swung his scepter about his crowned head and roared in the voice of a lion, then off goes thy head." It was very fortunate for the unhappy Drosmir that the king's dinner had been cooked better than usual this day, so that he was in a pleasant humor and disposed to listen to the reason, while the good queen, who was moved by the hard fate of the mechanist, used her influence to soothe him. Drosmir then after a while took courage and represented to the monarch that he had performed his task in discovering the means to restore the princess to her beauty, and thus, by the terms of the royal decree, had secured safety. The king had said that was all trash, stupid stuff and nonsense, but resolved at least that the watchmaker should leave the court instantly, accompanied by the royal astronomer, and never return without the nut Krakatunk in his pocket. By the intercession of the queen, he consented that the nutcracker might be summoned by notice in all the home and foreign newspapers and journals. Here, the chancellor broke off again and promised to narrate the rest on the following evening. Water is quite lovely. Chapter 9. Conclusion of the story of the hard nut. The next evening, as soon as the candles were lit, Godfather Drosmir appeared and continued his story as follows. Drosmir and the astronomer had been 15 years on their journey without seeing the least signs of the nut Krakatunk. It would take me a month, children, to tell you where they went and what strange things happened to him. I must pass them over and commence where Drosmir sank at least into despondency, and felt a great desire to see his dear native city, Nuremberg. This desire came upon him all at once, as he was smoking a pipe of tobacco with his friend in the middle of a great wood in Asia. "Oh, sweet city," he cried. "Oh, sweet native city, sweet Nuremberg. He who has never seen thine, though he may travel to London, Paris, Rome, if his heart was not dead to emotion, must continually desire to visit thee. Thee, O Nuremberg, sweet city, where there are so many beautiful houses with windows. As Rasimir grieved in such sorrowful manner, the astronomer was moved with sympathy and began to cry and howl so pitifully that it was heard far and wide through Asia. He soon composed himself again and wiped tears out of his eyes and said, "Why, my respected colleague, why sit here and howl? Why should we not go to Nuremberg? Is it not the same wherever we seek after this miserable nutcracker tuck?" "That is true," replied Drosselmeyer, greatly consoled. Both arose and knocked out their pipes. Hi, Bug. Alright. Both arose, knocked out their pipes, and went straight away out of the wood in the middle of Asia, right to Nuremberg. They had scarcely arrived there when Drosselmeyer ran to his brother, Christopher Zacharias Drosselmeyer, puppet maker, varnisher, and glider, whom he had not seen for these many years. The watchmaker told him the whole story of the Princess Pirlipat, Lady Mousering, and the Nutcracker Tuck, so that he struck his hands together over and over again with astonishment and exclaimed, "Aye, aye, brother, brother, what strange things are these?" Drosselmeyer then related the history of his travels, how he passed 2 years with King Date, how coldly he had been received by the Prince Almond, and how he had sought information to no purpose of the Natural Society in Squirrelberg. In short, how his search everywhere had been in vain to find even the least sign of the Nutcracker Tuck. During this account, Christopher Zacharias had often snapped his fingers, turned upon one foot, winked, laughed, clucked with his tongue, and then called out, "Hi him, hi-yi-oh," if it should. At least he tossed his hat and wig up in the air, clasped his brother around the neck, and cried, "Brother, brother, you are safe, safe I say, for I must be wonderfully mistaken if I have not that Nutcracker Tuck at this very moment in my possession." He then drew a little box from his pocket and took out of it a gilded nut of moderate size. "See," he said, "this nut fell into my hands in this way. Many years ago a stranger came here at Christmas time with a sack full of nuts, which he offered for sale cheap. Just as he passed my shop, he got into a quarrel with a nut seller in the city, who did not like to see a stranger come hither to undersell him, and for this reason attacked him. The man put down his sack upon the ground and begged to defend himself, and at the same moment a heavily laden wagon passed directly over it. All the nuts were cracked in pieces except for this one, which the stranger, with a singular smile, offered me for a bright dollar of the year 1720. I thought that strange, but as I found myself in my pocket just such a dollar as the man wanted, I bought the nut and glided it over, not exactly knowing why I bought the nut so dear, or why I set so much store by it." Hi, Dingo! Hi, hi! I'm reading Christmas stories! Yay! We're finishing up the Nutcracker and the Mouse King. All doubt whether this nut was actually the long-sought Cracker Tuck was instantly removed when the astronomer was called, who carefully scraped off the gold and found upon the rind the word Cracker Tuck engraved in Chinese characters. The joy of the travelers was beyond bounds, and the brother the happiest man under the sun, for Drosselmeyer assured him that his fortune was made, since he would have a considerable pension for the rest of his days. And then there was the gold which had to be scraped off. He might keep that for gelding. The mechanist and the astronomer had both put on their nightcaps and were getting into bed as the latter commenced. "My worthy colleague, good fortune never comes single. Take my word for it, we have found not only the Nutcracker Tuck, but also the young man who is to crack it, and hand the kernel to the princess. I mean, nobody else than your brother's son. I cannot sleep. No, this very night I must cast the youth's horoscope." With these words, he drew the nightcap off his head and began straightway to take an observation. The brother's son was in truth a handsome, well-grown young man who had never been shaven and who had never worn boots. In his early youth, he had on Christmas nights gone around as a merry Andrew, but this could not be seen in his behavior in the least, so well had his manners been formed by his father's care. On Christmas days he wore a handsome red coat trimmed with gold, a sword, a hat under his arm, and a curling wig. In this fine dress he would stand in his father's shop, and out of the goutery crack nuts for the young girls, for which he was called the handsome nutcracker. By the following morning the astronomer was in raptures. He fell upon the mechanist's neck and cried, "It is he! We have him! He is found! But there are two things, worthy colleague, which we must see to. In the first place, we must braid your excellent nephew a stout wooden queue, which shall be joined in such a way to his lower jaw that it can be moved with great force. In the next place, when we arrive at the king's palace, we must let no one know that we have brought the young man with us who is to crack the Crackertuck. It is best that he should not be found for a long time. I read in his horoscope that after many young men have broken their teeth with no purpose, the king will promise to him who breaks the nut and restores the princess her lost beauty, the princess herself, and the succession to the throne as a reward." His brother, the puppet maker, was highly delighted to think that his son might marry the Princess Pirlipat and become a prince and king, and he gave him up entirely into the hands of the two travelers. The queue which Drosimir fastened upon his young and hopeful nephew answered admirably, so that he made a series of the most successful experiments, even upon the hardest peach stones. As Drosimir and the astronomer sent immediate information to the palace of the discovery of the Nutcrackertuck, suitable notices had been published. And when travelers arrived, many handsome young men, and among them some handsome princes, had arrived, who, trusting to their sound teeth, were ready to undertake the disenchantment of the princess. The travelers were not a little terrified when they beheld the princess again. Her little body, with its tiny hands and feet, were hardly able to carry her great misshapen head, and the ugliness of her face was increased by a white cotton beard which had spread itself around her mouth and over her chin. What happened as the astronomer had read in the horoscope. One youth in shoes after another bit upon the Nutcrackertuck until his teeth and jaws were sore, and he was led away, half swooning, by the physician in attendance, and sighed out, "That was a hard nut." When the king, in anguish of his heart, had promised his daughter and his kingdom to him who should effect the disenchantment, the young, handsome Drosimir stepped forward and begged for permission to begin the experiment. And no one had pleased the fancy of Princess Pirlipat as well as young Drosimir. She laid her little hand upon her heart and sighed deeply. "Ah, if this might be the one who is to crack the Nutcrackertuck and become my husband." After young Drosimir had gracefully saluted the king and queen, and then the Princess Pirlipat, he received the Nutcrackertuck from the hands of the masters of ceremonies, put it without hesitation between his teeth, pulled his queue very hard, and crack, crack, the shell broke into many pieces. He then nicely removed the little threads and broken bits of shell that hung to the kernel, and breached it with a low bow to the princess, after which he shut his eyes and began to walk backwards. The little princess straightway swallowed the kernel, and behold, her ugly shape was gone, and in its place appeared a most beautiful figure, with a face of roses and lilies, delicate white and red, eyes of living, sparkling azure, and locks curling in bright golden ringlets. Drums and trumpets mingled their sounds with the loud rejoicings of the people. The king and his whole court danced, as at Pirlipat's birth, upon one leg, and the queen, who had to be carefully tended to with cologne water, because she had fallen into a swoon from delight and rapture. Mhm, mhm. Young Drosmir, who had still his 7 steps to perform, was a good deal discomposed from the tumult, but he kept firm, and just kept stretching back his right foot for the 7th step, when Lady Mousefrings rose squeaking and squealing out of the floor. Down came his foot upon her head, and he stumbled, so that he hardly kept himself from falling. Alas, what a hard fate! As quick as thought, the youth was changed into the former figure of the princess. His body became shriveled up, and was hardly able to support his great misshapen head. His eyes turned green and staring, and his jaw now stretched from ear to ear. Instead of his queue, a narrow wooden cloak hung down upon his back, with which he moved his lower jaw. The watchmaker and astronomer were benumbed with terror and affright, while Lady Mousefrings rolled, bleeding and kicking upon the floor. Her malice did not go unpunished, for young Drosmir had trodden upon her neck so heavily with the sharp heel of his shoe that she could not survive. When Lady Mousefrings lay in her last agony, she squeaked and whimpered in piteous tone, "O Crackatuck, hard nut, hi hi, of thee I must now die. Q, 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 sun with 7 crowns will bite. Nutcracker at night, hi hi hi. Q, Q, and revenge his mother's death. Short breath must I, hi hi hi, die die die. So young, Q, 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 oh agony, keek." With this cry, Lady Mousefrings died, and the royal oven heater carried out her body. As for young Drosmir, no one troubled himself any further about him. But the princess put the king in mind of his promise, and he commanded that they should bring the young hero before him. But when the unfortunate youth approached, the princess held both hands before her face and cried, "Away, away with the ugly Nutcracker!" The court-martial immediately took him by the shoulders and pushed him out the doors. The king was full of anger because they had wished to give him a Nutcracker for a son-in-law, and he put all the blame on the mechanist and the astronomer and banished them forever from the kingdom. This did not stand in the horoscope which the astronomer had set up at Newmanburg, but he did not allow himself to be discouraged. He straightway took another observation, and declared that he could read in the stars. The young Drosmir would conduct himself so well in his new station, that in spite of his deformity, he would yet become a prince and a king, and that his former beauty would return, as soon as the son of Lady Mousefrings, who had been born with 7 heads after the death of her 7 sons, had fallen by his hand, and a maiden had loved him, notwithstanding his ugly shape. They say that the young Drosmir has actually been seen around Christmas time in his father's shop at Newmanburg as a nutcracker. It is true, but at the time as a prince. This, children, is the story of the hard nut. And did you know why people say so often that was a hard nut, and whence it comes that nutcrackers are so ugly? The counselor thus concluded his narration, and Maria thought the Princess Pirlipat was a ill-natured, ungrateful thing, and Fred declared that if Nutcracker were anything of a man, he would not be long in settling matters with the Mouse King, and would get his old shape again very soon. Hi, Azuma! I'm struggling to read Nutcracker and the Mouse King. My vocal cords keep vibrating against each other. I have about 3 more chapters, I think, and then I might have to call stream on account of my voice being like, "Hi, you should stop." But I want to finish the Nutcracker. I'm sorry, hun. I hope it gets easier for you. I hope so too. Thank you for the hydrate routine back. I'm almost out of water. I think I'm about a third. I have been drinking water. This was full at the start of stream, and now it's like a third of the way done. Yeah, it's about it's like a third or a fourth of the way to the bottom. It's very good to see you. I'm happy I was able to catch your stream. Yeah! I'm happy that you're able to catch one of my streams too. Decided to do some Christmas reading or some Christmas stories because Christmas time is around the corner. It's sooner than you think. Ah. But tell how was your day so far? I hope it's been good. Stretch. Thank you for the stretch. My wrist just popped. Alright. Slowly getting better. Dear, thank you for asking. Yeah! Alright. More water. Chapter 10. The Uncle and Nephew. You too, cute precious bee. Thank you. Candy cane break. Okay, well, screw you, ads. Nobody likes you. Yeah, but I'm so close to being done. You sound tired and your voice sounds stressed, sweetheart. It's 13 past midnight for me right now. And I am recovering from a slight cold. I had a sore throat about 2 days ago. So, I don't know. You're 2 hours behind me. Alright, let me see. How much further? Oh dear God, victory is a long one. Oh, there's so many chapters. Okay, I think we might have to put a stop here. Because there's so many chapters. It is 2:13 a.m. for me. Remember to drink plenty and take breaks here and there to avoid stressing your voice too much. Nutcracker is a very long story. The chapters are relatively short, but I don't remember them having so many chapters to them. But I also have only seen the ballet a good handful of times, and I've never actually read the story of the Nutcracker before. So I'm just like, It also loves stressing every single detail. Yeah, I've started to notice that too. But I don't know. I kind of like doing the reading streams. Wish my voice was a little bit in better conditions for that. But I think we might go ahead and stop here for today for the Nutcracker, and we'll probably continue it maybe tomorrow after I get back from work. Maybe tomorrow. I watched the Barbie version of the Nutcracker with my sister. The Barbie version's alright. I watched the ballet a good handful of times. It is indeed a long one, and plays in theaters usually cut a lot out in order to save on money and keep it to a certain amount. I know I kept on seeing people like thirsting after the Nutcracker from Barbie and the Nutcracker, and I'm just like, why? I love the story of the Nutcracker. Ew, just ew. Ba, 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 ba. I don't know. Although on the story of the Barbie movies, or on the topic of the Barbie movies, so I take it you're rating out. I might talk for a little bit longer, but I think in terms of rating, I might have to stop it out. I might have to stop now, just to try and give my voice some reprieve. Candy cane, please don't break it. But on the topic of like the princess movies, I have to say my favorite one. Be sure you hydrate plenty and rest when you can. Once I end stream, I'm probably gonna go to bed. I think my favorite dress from the Barbie movies is probably from 12 Dancing Princesses. I absolutely love the T-length dresses that all the princesses wore. And the shoes were so pretty too. I can't dance. I don't know ballet. But I absolutely loved that movie when I was growing up. Fairytopia. I used to teach it. Oh. I don't know. I feel pretty comfortable standing on my tiptoes, but I also, but I'm also not like on my toes, like what I've seen in 4-point shoes, and I'm just like, yeah, I do not have that dexterity in my feet. But yeah, Fairytopia was also one of the first Barbie movies that I watched as well. And I have to say, I think the second movie, Look, is probably my favorite one. Where she gets new wings and they look more like and her outfit overall looks more like a butterfly. Fairytopia was probably one of the better Barbie movie trilogies that I've seen when I was younger, so I have a special place in my heart for that one. But yeah, I'm gonna bookmark the Nutcracker real quick before I forget. Okay, it doesn't have that. It's fine. I will figure it out later. I just won't turn off my computer. Ha ha ha. But yeah, so I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what to talk about. Help. Some point during December, I plan on doing a little Christmas karaoke. Yeah! It is going to be horribly scuffed. It is going to be absolutely scuffed. Sorry, not sorry. I'm tired. And a lot of these Christmas songs kind of sound the same, so I wish. See, it does fine with like hand turns and the finger movements, but like actually like reading my arms, it's Actually having like real-time responses, my web camera doesn't do super fantastic to it with it, so I'm just like, I'm also super bright. Oh. Pum, 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 pum. You will sing Christmas songs? Yeah, I'll sing Christmas songs. I'm not singing the Mariah Carey one. One, because her register is higher than what I can comfortably sustain. Two, I also am just not a big fan of the song. I'm just not a big fan of it. But we'll probably do Holly Jolly Christmas. Dear God, what are some other Christmas songs? I sang a whole bunch back in high school, and now I can't remember a single one. But we'll sing some old ones. We'll sing some goodies, and I can't, Rose. I can't. I've heard every Christmas song there is, including the new ones from like Sia from Ariana Grande. Because I like Snowman and Me from Sia, despite all the controversy that she's in. I like the Chuck Berry one. I don't know that one. But yeah. So, some point during Run Run Rudolph, I don't know that one. But yeah, we'll have to play it by ear, unfortunately, for my voice, because during drastic weather changes, that is when my voice is just like, hey, you know what would be fantastic? For you not to be able to speak. If you hear it, you probably know it. Maybe. And then at some, one song that I am gonna sing for the Christmas karaoke, even though it is technically not a Christmas song, Once Upon a December. Why? Because I love Anastasia. We're gonna watch it at some point in the Discord. Be prepared. Hi, I'm making you guys watch a musical with me. I mean, we watch K-pop Demon Hunter, so it's fine. But yeah, no. But yeah. But yeah, a musical, yeah, it's technically a musical. It's a good one in my personal opinion. Okay, I won't judge too soon. Have you seen Titan AE? Because it's by the same guy, or it's drawn by the same guy who did Titan AE. There's not a lot of people on that I know. Alright, so there's Valorant, there's Where the Winds Meet, or there is Just Chatting, or Metroid Prime 4. So I'll let you guys decide. Metroid Prime 4, Just Chatting stream, Valorant, or Where the Winds Meet. Because we are going to go ahead and raid out so I can get some sleep and hopefully be back tomorrow and maybe a little bit better health than what I'm currently displaying right now. Oh right, I need to commission a little Christmas bottle. I think that's how you say it. I don't remember. It's late. I say it's late and I won't be going to bed for like another half an hour. I think we're gonna go ahead and raid into Zeki. Zeki VT, who is playing Where the Winds Meet. We're going to hope that it will let me raid. Okay, it's letting me raid. Yay! But anyways, thank you everybody for stopping by and for dropping in and listening to me butcher how to listening to me butcher Nutcracker and the Mouse King. But anyways, thank you everybody so much for stopping by, and I hope you guys have a good night, a good morning, a good day, a good afternoon, and a good evening. Until next time, this is Lacrima Rose signing off. Bye bye. We're gonna ignore how sketch the waving is. Have a good rest of your night. Thank you, Bug. Have a good day.